the world far and wide. So as I say, those are the 8 objectives I'm going to go through the session. Pen and paper will probably be quite useful, and being a math session, very handy if you've got a calculator. I'll ask you to do some calculations and put your answers in the chat window as well. So have a calculator maybe on your phone or something that can help you. As you know, in the functional skills test, there are some questions where you're allowed a calculator and some where you're not. I'll let you have them today, but when you're practicing in future, if you can practice them without a calculator, then even better. So if they come up in that section, you know you've got even more strings to your bow. So first thing, as we've asked all of the sessions today, I'm going to ask you, how confident do you feel about working out the mean of a set of numbers? 1 being least confident, 10 being most confident. If you're happy to share, just put a number in the chat window and let me know between 1 least and 10 most where you think you are on that scale about working out the mean of if you were given a set of numbers. A few 5s there, a couple of higher ones, a couple of lower ones. Okay, that's all middle ground, because on average, I should say, but so that's pretty good. I'll ask you another question then. So this session is about what's called a grouped mean. Can anybody put their score for grouped means in the chat? If they know if that might not be different to your normal, regular means, but how do you feel if you were asked to work out what's called a grouped mean, or using maybe what's called a frequency table? Could you give a different score for that? Okay, so mainly lower scores, I think, for that. Well, hopefully you'll see from this that a lot of the work you're doing is the same, no matter what kind of mean you are. There's just a bit more to it with the more complicated the question, and that's where group means come in. Just as a bit of a refresher, the mean is a type of average, and there are actually 3 types of average: mean, median, and mode. And there's also a thing called range, which is, they're always lumped in together: mean, median, mode, and range. And within the functional skills test, these are, I can guarantee you 100% there'll be at least 1 average question and 1 range question. And it's useful just to remember how to work those out. I'm not going to go into detail, but what I am going to share with you, and I may even sing it, is there's a little riddle you can remember. I must admit, whenever I do this, I often forget what the tune is, and I'm thinking it's the wrong tune, but it is on Hey Diddle Diddle. So the tune is Hey Diddle Diddle, the median's the middle. You add, then divide for the mean. The mode is the one that appears the most, and the range is the difference between. So very quickly, if you've got a set of numbers, the median is the middle figure. You need to put your numbers in order and find the one in the middle. For the mean, you add and then divide, and we'll come back to that shortly. The mode is the number that appears the most. So if there's a load of numbers and there are 10 7s in there, then 7 will be your mode, because that's the one that appears the most. And the range is the difference between the highest number and the lowest number. So for range, you simply take the highest number and take away the lowest number. So if you're sitting in the test and you can't quite remember, hopefully Hey Diddle Diddle come to mind, and you won't sing it to 3 Blind Mice or something like I normally do. But there you go, that little rhyme might just remember the difference there. And we're going to look particularly at mean. Mean is what sometimes people call the true average, or when we're talking about average in everyday life, we're usually talking about the mean, but technically median and mode are types of average as well. We're going to talk about mean today. So working out the mean, we might get a scenario such as this. There's a group of children, they're all the following ages: 4, 5, 7, 5, 7, 6, 3, 4, 5, 8. Those are the ages of these children. And the question might be, what is their mean or average age, just to work out. Can anybody tell me in the chat either how you would work out the mean, or actually if you've got your calculator in front of you and you want to do it quickly, then let me know what the mean is. So put your answer in the chat. How would you work out the mean from this set of figures? Mean age, average age, and if you can you actually work it out and put your answer in the chat for me? Of course, if you can do it without a calculator, even better. Suggestion there from Louise. Anybody else got a suggestion or an answer for me? Brilliant, Heather. I'll go back to my slide before. The third line says you add, then divide for the mean. So to work out the mean or the average mean for a set of numbers, what you do is add them all up, which in this case will be 4, add 5, add 7, and so on, which gives us a total of 54. Angela actually got the answer, says yes here. Adam has, with the question marks. He wasn't 100% sure, but you are right, Adam. So the total is 54. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 children. So all we do is divide that 54, the total age, by the 10 children, and it gives us 5.4. So what we're doing there in reality is we're putting all, if we're running all these children, we're putting all their ages in together in a pot, And then we're giving out that age to 10 different people to even them all out. So some are lower, some are younger, some are higher. And what we do is basically even them out. So on average, every child we're saying that would be 5.4. And if we look at those figures, it's hard to tell there, but that looks about right. There's a few 7-year-olds, a couple of 6-year-olds, but there is a 3-year-old as well. So 5 seems about in the middle of where we'd be. So we know we've probably got the right answer there. So adding them all up and divide by how many they are, they're great. The same figures could be represented in a different way though. So I've put it top right there. And what we might do is, rather than knowing the ages of children, we may want to know, maybe there was a survey in the school and they asked, maybe they looked, the school governors board were looking at incidents of bullying in a nursery and an infant school. And so they look at how many children have reported bullying in that age, at the age. So what this table might be, there was 1 child age 3 who reported it. There were 2 children age 4, 3 children age 5, and so on and so on. So I've taken those numbers and put this into what's called a frequency table. So you see the age of the children and the number there are. We may want to work out the mean again. So we could either separate them all out into a list there, which would be fine in this case because it's 10 children. But if there were 500 children, that would take us a long time. We want a quicker way of doing it from this frequency table. And the way we do that is we multiply the age by the frequency of the children. So if I can just get my pen on here. So for this first one, the age we're talking about is 3-year-olds. And there was only one of them who said that. So 3 times 1 equals 3. If I go down to this one, I'm missing out that one, but I won't miss it out. I will come back to it. This is the age of 5, and there are 3 children. And so that will equal 15. And we could do the same with each of them. We do 7 times 2, 6 times 1, I missed 8 times 1, and so on until we get the age and frequency of each of those lines in the table. So 3 times 1, 4 times 2, 5 times 3, 6, 1, 7 times 2, and 6 times 1. And that would give us the total ages for each, or total frequencies for each of those different categories. To work out mean now, we still want to do the same kind of thing as we did before, but we need the total frequency, so the total number of ages, divided by the total number of people there are. So I'll tell you what, I'll give you seeing as some of you got calculators, can you add up this column for me of the total frequency, which is 3, 8, 15, 6, 14, and 8. Chocolate bar for the first person to add them up. I can't guarantee that, I'm afraid. We've already got Heather, 54, very good. 54 coming through, brilliant. And you're correct. And if we remember back to our previous question, that was the total age. So if we added all those up, we get 54. And we've just done it in a different kind of way here. And we still got 54. The total number of children is still the same. So if we add those up, we get 10 children. And we'll do the same as we did before. We'll do the total frequency divided by the total number, which is 54 divided by 10 equals 5.4, which again, you'll remember we got that on the previous slide as well. So it's the same data, just represented in a different way. Now, as I say, here we know there's 1 3-year-old, 2 4-year-olds, 3 5-year-olds, and we could write them in a list. But if these numbers were 100 and 200 and 360, obviously we're not going to write them in a list, we'll be here all day. So we would follow this process of age multiplied by the frequency, or the number of children in this case, would give us a total, and we add them all up to get 54. And then we divide it by how many children there are, which in our case was 10, would give us the answer. Louise is asking for a crunchy. I've eaten all the selection boxes now after Christmas, I'm afraid. So the process we've gone through is fine for a frequency table where we've got the age and the number of children. So what about what's called a grouped data? So a scenario might be, again, a group of people were asked how old they were when they decided the religion they wanted to follow, and their responses were recorded below. So again, we're looking at age and we're looking at the number of people. So what this table is telling us is when people were asked, when do you think, how old were you when you decided which religion you wanted to follow? And between 0 and 3, nobody felt they were that young. But there were 4 people that said when they were between ages of 4 and 7, they chose their religion. There were 19 people who said they were between 8 and 11. There were 12 people between 12 and 15. So we've got some grouped data because obviously these are in groups for us. So we need to work those out. So, excuse me. So on the previous slide, I said we could write those out. But let's take these people here. There are 4 of them in this category. So all 4 of them could have been 4 years old, or they could have been 7 years old, or we could have a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old, a 6-year-old, a 7-year-old. We could have had 3 6-year-olds and a 4-year-old. We don't know the spread of those people because we've put them into these categories. So actually, we can only really estimate the mean, but we can do our best guess of what the mean might be. So once again, and we need to do the frequency, but what we did previously, we did this column multiplied by this column. Well, if we look at the age, we've got 0 to 3 and 4 to 7 and 8 to 11. So we can't just multiply them. We need to do something else. And what we'll do, therefore, is work out what's called the midpoint of each of these categories. And that will give us a rough estimate of where they are. So as we say, let's take this second one. I said there are 4 people in here, and they're going to be between 4 and 7 years of age. We don't quite know the spread, but let's say in the middle point between 4 and 7, we want to find the halfway point. So let's say 4 add 7 equals 11. And we want to find the halfway point. So we'll divide that by 2, and that will give us a midway point of 5.5. So we're saying in this category, on average, that we're going to say the children are 5.5. Let's take this one here. We've got the age range of 12 to 15. To add 15. If we add those up, they'll come to 27. And if we divide that by 2, that should equal 13.5. And again, I haven't done the 2, but you would need to do all of them. So if I raise my writing. So what you would need to do, first of all, for this kind of when we've got the grouped frequencies, when the grouped categories over here, we need to find the midpoints. And the easiest way to do that is to add the 2 numbers up and divide by 2. Let me give you an example of proving that that works. If we take 0 to 3, they are the ages 0, 1, 2, and 3. And as I said, we want to find the middle point. So we're going to cross out that one. We're going to cross out that one. And so we know our midpoint is going to be somewhere between these two, which in this case is 1.5. So the easiest way to work out the midpoint is add the 2 numbers together and divide by 2. What we did on the last one is we then took our figure that we've now got this midpoint figure, and we need to multiply it by the frequency, how many people there are. So again, if we take these as some examples, the first one is going to be, I've actually written the wrong way around, that one is 1.5 times 0, which is 0. For the second one, our midpoint is 5.5, and there are 4 people who said that. So we do 5.5 equals 22. For our 16 to 19 category, the midpoint is 17.5. There were 8 people who said that. So we do 17.5 times 8, and that will give us 140 here. So the first step is to work out the midpoint, then to multiply that by the frequency. We said previously that the way to work out the mean is our total frequency divided by our total number. So can some people on their calculator work out the total frequency, which is going to be the number here, and then some other people, if you can work out the total number of people we've got here, we'll get our 2 totals at the bottom here. So I'll give you a couple of minutes on your calculator. If you can add up the total frequency on the right, and if anybody can add up the number of people, and then share those figures with me in the chat once you've got them. You're welcome to do them in your head again if you want to. Louise is very quick off the draw there. And we also need the total number of people. So just like we did on any mean, we need the total of something divided by how many there are. In this case, it's the total frequency divided by the total number. Adam's done quick with 44. Angela's got both. Fantastic. Agnieszka's gone one step ahead, which is great to see as well. So correct those people who said that our total frequency from here was 526. The total number of people we've got is 44. And so if we do the total frequency divided by the number is 526 divided by 44 is 11.95, which said I think Agnieszka got. So that is our average. Now, again, it's an estimated average because we don't know exactly the spread of the children's ages here. We know the people's ages here. We just know sort of the categories of them. But if we look, the answers come out at 11.95, which is pretty much here, isn't it? Because it's just below 12. And if we look above here, there's 21 people. And below here, there are 23 people. So we know the average was going to be around there. So it's given us a good estimate, a good understanding of where the average would be. And the number is in line with what we would expect it to be. If we'd got our number as age 2, that obviously was wrong. If we got our number as age 46, that would have been wrong as well. So we know we're about in the middle there. So we've also done a sense check and checked we've got the correct answer that we would expect. So hopefully that's gone through with you. And now what I want to do is give you a practice. I know you've done some adding up there, but I'll get you to do some more things here now. So let's think of another scenario. This is an Indian restaurant, and it records the number of orders they receive over 3 weeks. And the owner wants to know the estimated average or mean number of orders that they've got. So what this table's telling us is the restaurant had between 1 and 5 orders on 2 days, between 6 and 10 orders on 4 days, 11 and 15 orders on 11 days, and 16 to 20 orders on 4 days. I have no idea whether they were accurate numbers for a restaurant. I should confirm them and try to find out. Not at the moment, since we're all in lockdown. Maybe it should have been takeaway orders. So can anybody tell me in the chat really quickly, what's the first thing that you would do in this situation? What's the first thing we need to find out? Anybody tell me in the chat? Brilliant, Agnieszka, straight to the point, and we get midpoints. So we need to find the midpoints of our categories here. And if you remember, I said the easiest way to do it is add those two numbers up and divide by 2. So if you add 1 and 5, you'd have 6. Divided by 2 give us a midpoint of 3. And I'll be quiet for a minute and let everybody else work out the other midpoints. You can put them in the chat if you want to, or just note them down on a piece of paper. But we need 4 midpoints there. Just give you a few more seconds. Let's get rid of that off the screen. Hopefully some of you had a chance to find those midpoints. I can see them coming in, which is great. So yeah, the midpoints are 3, 8, 13 and 18. Anybody tell me in the chat what the next calculation is that we need to do, or you need to do, because I'm going to get you to do this one. Have our midpoints. So what calculation do we need? Fantastic. We need to multiply our midpoint by the number of days that those numbers occurred. So it's going to be 3 times 2, 8 times 4, 13 times 11, and 18 times 4. Again, I'll give you a couple of minutes to see if you can work those 4 out. First 2 may be in your head, the second 2, pen and paper or calculator might be a bit quicker. And yes, give us some answers. Brilliant, so was Heather. Slightly out with the last one, I think, Heather. Now, I don't know whether you've gone ahead and added them all up maybe together, I'm not sure. So the midpoint times the frequency is going to be 3 times 2 is 6, 8 times 4 is 32, 13 times 11 is 143. Thanks, and Heather got it in the end, was 72. And again, what I've said throughout, the way we work out mean is the total frequency, which is going to be over here, times by the total number over here. And actually, the question says the Indian restaurant records the number of orders they receive over 3 weeks. So it's actually 3 lots of 7. So it's actually 21 should be our number of days. So if you add up the midpoints, it comes to 253. And if you add these up, it'd confirm it's 21 days. And all we do is simply total frequency divided by the total number, in this case days, which would give us a figure of 12.05. If you've done that on the calculator, you should see, I'm just double checking. Yeah, it was, oops, looks like I've got the wrong number in. Wouldn't help, would it? It's actually 12.0476190 and so on. And I've rounded it to 2 decimal places to 12.05. If you're unsure about rounding or decimal places, then we can support you with that on separately. Speak to your tutor or some work on skills forward for that. You could round that. There's a question there about rounding that up. In this case, I would keep it whole. We don't know the exact numbers here. So once again, there are 2 days when they order between 1 and 5. But they both could have been 5, both could have been 1, or both could have been 3. So we don't know the exact order. So we can only really work out an estimated average. So we would keep that full figure of 12.05. We can't say that it's only 12 because we're only estimating anyway. So we can use that. And again, if we go back to our to the actual question at the start, or the scenario at the start, most orders are in here, and the 6 below that and 4 above that. So actually, he's going to be on the lower end of this category. And it's 12.05, so that's towards the lower end of that category, so again, makes sense. So a quick recap for you before we finish. So a regular mean in inverted commas, the normal mean is where you've got a load of numbers, and what you do is add them all up and divide by how many there are. It's nice and straightforward, and lots of you got that straight off. For a table data, what we want to do is take the number of something we've got and the frequency, how often it occurs, multiply them together, and that will give us the total frequency, and then we can divide by the total number to give us our mean. So we're still doing the total frequency divided by how many there are in effect. And the other one is what's called group data, and this is exactly the same. It would appear in a table, but we would have midpoints. We wouldn't have exact numbers. We would have midpoints. We'd have categories. We'd find those midpoints. We multiply those by the frequency, and then once again we do total frequency divided by the total number. So hopefully that makes sense. I said today we'd go through questions that involve different types of means. So I did mention the little hey doodle diddle riddle at the start, if you want to remember that. But particularly when you're remembering mean, you've either got the regular straightforward mean, or you're using tables and frequency tables. If you've got frequency tables, we either multiply them, or we need to find out the midpoint before we can do our multiplying. And at the end there, you've practiced a group mean question. As you all know, you've got your functional skills tutor. So if you want to do any more practice or anything you're not sure of from this, then please do speak to them. You may have access to skills forward learning or other learning. As I've said in other sessions today, you could search for group means on the internet and you'll get 1,000,001 responses. You can go on and try some of those, but your tutors are there for you to reach out if you'd like any support. So just before we finish, can you have a think about how confident you are about working out different types of mean, including group means, and just give us a score in the box of 1 to 10. If you're happy to share. If you're not, then that's absolutely fine. And if you're higher than you were before, then that's great. Hopefully you know a bit more. If you still feel there's some learning to do, then obviously you can go back over this. We can send you the slides to go over them. And as I said, please do reach out to your tutor or head on to Skills Forward or whatever source it might be. Work through that learning. Lots of scores coming through, some better, some still middling, so there's a little bit of work to be done there. That's great. It is one of the more difficult topics, which is why we chose it for today, but hopefully that will give you some insight into doing it as well. I'm going to stay around for a couple of minutes. If anybody's got any questions, please do put them in the chat, or you can put your microphone on and ask me if you'd rather. And as I say, you can contact myself or your tutor anytime after this, and we can support you with follow-up questions and follow-up work.